So, welcome to the webinar on the value of vulnerability as a public speaker, the value of vulnerability as a presenter, the value of vulnerability as a facilitator. And I've often been asked whether I should share, or whether we as speakers should share some of our concerns, some of our fears, some of our failures. And is that a good thing to do, or is it a bad thing to do? And hence the genesis of this webinar, the value of your vulnerability when you're speaking or presenting. So Peter Dew's my name. Most of you on the webinar will know me, and you've got further information. If you want to contact me, send me an email. I love feedback and follow-up. And if you have any further questions that result from the webinar, feel free to email me. And I do content marketing on my Facebook site, so you will get tips and hints via Facebook, or of course via my newsletter if you haven't already signed up. So the value of vulnerability. How do you participate in webinars? For those of you who are new, please ask questions as we go. You've got a little dialogue box that you can just type into at any time. The background's a bit noisy here, so I won't open up any microphones today, but at any stage, just type into the dialogue box and ask any questions you may have. Please take notes. Notes will help you remember. Notes will help you recall. And I think most importantly is, how can you apply this to your own presentation, your next facilitation, your next workshop? Is vulnerability one of those things that's going to be valuable for you, or is vulnerability one of those things that you don't want to talk about? And I just have to get rid of my drawing tool. Good. Erase all drawings. So let me ask you a question. Does sharing our vulnerability, and you can put your name there, does sharing your vulnerability with an audience, does it make you appear weak? Does it make you appear afraid? Does it make you appear not up to the job? What is your answer to that question? Please write in the dialogue box now. Does sharing your vulnerability make you appear weak, or that you're afraid, or that you're not up to the job? Please type into the dialogue box now. I'll just give you a few moments. Someone says that it depends, and indeed it does depend. And one of the slides I'm going to talk about is when not to share your vulnerability. Someone's put, if you're a leader and you show weakness, then staff will use it against you. It depends on the audience and how they will perceive it, and that's true. And you will know who your audience is because you will have done your homework, your background, to be absolutely sure of who is in that room. Those of you who are just joining, we have just started. Feel free to answer this question. Does sharing your vulnerability with an audience make us appear weak, afraid, or not up to the job? Someone has questioned whether they should share their vulnerability as a leader. And someone has also said it depends on the audience and how they will perceive your vulnerability. Any other comments on whether you think we should share our vulnerability or not? Okay, let's move on. This is my view. My view is that we should share your vulnerability. My view is that your vulnerability can add value to your presentation. And I've got a couple of quotes here that you may find interesting. The first one is from Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud said, "Out of your vulnerability will come strength." And then Brené Brown, she does a wonderful TED Talk. In her book, Daring in her book. Whoops. I'll just bring that back up. in her book, Daring Greatly, she talks about how armoring up, so the concept of armoring up or covering your vulnerability, it denies you the opportunity to face uncertainty, to face risk, to face emotional exposure, and it denies you the opportunity to utilize your courage, your compassion, and your connection. So there's two famous people, and you'll find lots of other quotes that will say that really your vulnerability is a valuable thing. So my view is yes, vulnerability is a powerful thing to use as a speaker, as a facilitator, and as a trainer. How does vulnerability help you? Well, it helps you connect with the audience. A lot of speakers think they need to be perfect. They need to be 100%. They must not make a mistake. Someone who's vulnerable, someone who does make a mistake, is seen as more real, as more genuine. And it helps you to connect and build that rapport with the audience. The person with the shield and has never made a mistake and 100% success rate, as they teach you stuff and teach you skills, may not share the same level of rapport and the same level of connection with their audience. So that's one reason how vulnerability will help you. It'll give you credibility. So credibility in that you've done that journey, credibility that you've already been through that experience. In public speaking, if you don't have credibility, your message may not stick. And credibility can come from your qualifications. Credibility can come from reputable data, reputable statistics. Credibility can come from using famous people, famous quotes. I've just used Sigmund Freud and I've just used Brené Brown to add a bit of credibility to what I'm suggesting. But credibility undoubtedly comes from your own life, your own lived experiences. So when you share your vulnerability, you are building your credibility. It demonstrates success. So especially when you've been through the journey, when you've overcome adversity, when you've gone from bankruptcy to a business success story, when you've gone from a fear of public speaking to now doing public speaking, when you've gone from marriage breakup to successfully moving on. If you are a marriage counsellor, it demonstrates success. It gives people hope. So if Peter can do this, if you can do this, then wow, I can do this as well. So your vulnerability shows other people that there may be a light shining at the end of the tunnel. So it does give people hope. And it is an aspect of honesty. It gives you that aspect of honesty. What we're seeing, certainly in politics, a lot of politicians are not disclosing or not telling everything about their lives, and it's being discovered by the media, discovered by someone else, and then when it's brought forward, it's seen as not being honest, as being evasive. So your vulnerability helps you and shows that you're honest, you're genuine, and you're authentic, and you don't have anything to hide. Now, most of us are not politicians, and I wouldn't necessarily reveal everything in my life, but if that fear, if that vulnerability relates to my topic, relates to my point, and I'm speaking about it, then it shows that I'm not hiding anything, that in fact I'm not the perfect person in this area, and I also have suffered or struggled, but this is what I've learnt from it. So it helps you connect with the audience, helps you build credibility, helps you demonstrate success, and it gives people hope. Let me ask you a question. Is there anything else that I could add there? How else does vulnerability help people as they present? What else could it do or add to your your connection or your connection or credibility. I'm open to suggestions. When do you think vulnerability would be valuable to you? Okay, someone's mentioned about if someone was working in an area and they've experienced the very area they're counselling in, then they have great rapport, great connection and credibility with the people they're working with. So I guess if you're working in drug and alcohol and you have recovered yourself, then that would give you great credibility. And that may be something you do disclose. It may be something you choose not to disclose. It would depend on the audience. Women who work in domestic violence, a lot of women's refuge workers have been through domestic violence themselves, and as they come out the other side and become stronger, they decide that they would like to help other women through this process. And they become great advocates, great counsellors, great support people. Once again, I think you need to be selective. So thank you for those comments. So vulnerability to me generally is an asset. Just waiting for my... So what's my vulnerability? Most of you know that I'm a person who stutters. I tell people at the front of my workshops, in my keynote presentations, and when I'm coaching with them, I tell them that I'm a person who stutters. And now I do public speaking training. Now I do public speaking workshops. I do keynote speaking, helping people unlock their potential. So my vulnerability is an asset to me. I use it to build credibility, to connect, to show that I've been through the journey, to also show people that if you are afraid of public speaking, the same as I was, then you can come through that and be a very effective public speaker. That's my vulnerability that I use in my workshops. What vulnerability could you use? What vulnerability could you disclose that would help you connect, build rapport, or build credibility with your audience? Just pause for a moment. And feel free to keep it generic. I'm not going to say any names. Just let me know what is one little thing you could reveal at an audience that might help you connect, credibility, build rapport, be seen as honest, be seen as knowing. Share your own journey. Yes, you can share your own journey. Tell some stories, success stories. Okay. So my vulnerability works for me. Which pieces of your vulnerability can you use the next time you speak to be more credible, have greater connection, and come across as really honest and authentic? I'm just going to pause. Are there any questions at this stage regarding the concept of revealing your vulnerability, revealing your fears, revealing your failures as a speaker or presenter? Are there any questions? No questions? This will be a very short webinar if there's no questions. So moving on. Sometimes our vulnerability is indeed the elephant in the room. So we try to hide it and we don't talk about it, we don't mention it, but people already know about it. And that's where I think it's really valuable to reveal your vulnerability. I work a lot with people who have an absolute fear of public speaking. They're very nervous. They don't enjoy public speaking. One of the things I let them know or one of the things I suggest to them is to share that elephant in the room with the audience. You're probably going to look a little bit nervous anyhow, and the audience really doesn't mind. If you've got good messages, you've got good content, and you help the people in the room move forward, then they don't mind whether you're a little bit nervous or not. So one of the ways you can use your vulnerability is simply by saying, look guys, I don't enjoy public speaking. In fact, I'm quite nervous, but just bear with me because I've got 2 or 3 things I really want to share with you. And all of a sudden, you are no longer trying to hide the elephant. You're no longer trying to hide your nerves. You've disclosed. People say, oh yeah, okay, so, you know, he's nervous. In fact, I'm glad he's up there because I get nervous when I stand up there as well. And now you can move on, not trying to hide your nerves. You've already revealed that aspect. So do you have an elephant in the room? I worked with a guy who has an acquired brain injury, and he does speaking in terms of health consumer rights. He likes to let people know that you have a right for a second opinion, you have a right to learn more about your condition. With his acquired brain injury, he forgets what he's saying. So he'll be speaking and then his mind goes blank. He loses the word. So he needs to disclose this up front. He needs to say, look guys, I've got an acquired brain injury. Every now and then my mind will go blank. But just bear with me. Just bear with me if my mind does go blank. And I will remember what it is and I'll move on. Someone's alarm's going off, feel free to leave the webinar. If your alarm's going off, you must go. So my vulnerability, my elephant is that I stutter. Is your vulnerability, your elephant, that you're nervous? You've got an acquired brain injury. What is it that you can reveal up front that people probably already know? So that's about revealing your vulnerability. With vulnerability, you expand your comfort zone. So it's about taking some risks. It's about moving forward. So vulnerability, if you go back to Brené Brown's quote, vulnerability is about growing and expanding your comfort zone. If you don't render yourself vulnerable, then you're going to stay within that certain, that comfort, that non-growth zone. So vulnerability is about taking some risks, and I like to take small risks at a time. So this little fish has put it all on the line. He's jumping out of a small world into a big world. I like to take smaller risks. So reveal your vulnerability slowly. What's the response from the audience? If you do get rejection, then put that vulnerability aside and look for another way of disclosing and connecting. So expand your comfort zone. Vulnerability is about taking some risks. Some words here. Hiding our vulnerability therefore keeps us safe, and we tend to stay within our comfort zone and within our existing limits. Vulnerability gets us out of comfort zones and often leads to new growth, new experiences that we would otherwise not have. In my own life, going to job interviews, time and time again, going to my job interviews and hiding my stutter, not telling the interview panel that I stutter, year after year after year, rejection, 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 rejection. Then one day, I just flipped the coin, and at the start of every job interview, I started to say, look, before I go on, I'd just like to let everyone know that I do stutter, and job interviews are quite stressful, so please bear with me if I do stutter. And the funny thing was, as soon as I disclosed my stutter at job interview, I would then move forward and do a 1-hour job interview without stuttering. And I started to get the jobs. I started to get the promotions that I probably deserved before. So vulnerability gets us out of our comfort zone and often leads to new growth and new experiences. And do you know what? The interview panel did not care that I stuttered, and they appreciated my honesty. Let me show you a little tool that talks about vulnerability just a little bit. It's the Johari Window. Johari Window, two clinical psychologists, John somebody and Harry somebody, formed this model called the Johari Window, John and Harry Window. Now let me talk you through it briefly. There is stuff that you know and others know also. So I am 6 foot tall and I have a bald head and I've got a greying beard. You know that when you see me. I know that. There's other stuff that I know about myself that other people don't know about me. And when I start a workshop, most people don't know that I stutter. So yeah, that's hidden. Most people don't know I've got 3 children. Most people don't know that I'm married to a girl that I went to kindergarten with. So this is my hidden area. Then we've got this area here that you know about me. And when you look at me speaking, when you hear me, you know it, but I don't know it about myself. Maybe I come across as arrogant. One person told me that when I do a thinking pose, I put my hands over my lips, and then when I speak with my hands over my lips, they could not understand me because they were hard of hearing and they needed to read my lips. I did not know that. That was a blind area for me. So this area here is not known by you and it's not known by anyone else, and I call this your unlocked potential. When you ask for feedback, so can you tell me how my presentation went? Can you tell me how the webinar went? I learn stuff about myself that I did not know, and I grow. My blind area diminishes. When someone told me I put my hand over my lips when I go into my resting position, I now know, I've now learnt to put my fingers under my chin when I go into that thinking pose. When I reveal my vulnerability, so when I tell something about myself that people don't know, I'm connecting, building rapport, building credibility. So once again, I'm unlocking potential. This area here, you don't know it about me and I don't know it about me. This is my undiscovered potential. As you give me feedback and as I reveal my vulnerability, I'm unlocking potential. That is the power of vulnerability. So every time you present, seek feedback, specific feedback. That will give you information about yourself, and work out what you're going to disclose, what you're going to share, some of your vulnerability, some of your journey, some of your story, and then you will build a greater connection and a greater rapport and greater credibility with your audience. Those two things combined, although this webinar is only about vulnerability, those two things combined will unlock your hidden potential. Really powerful tool. When not to share your vulnerability? Maybe at job interviews, in terms of leadership, when your leadership's gone wrong, or when you've had doubts, self-doubts about your ability to do a job. I mentioned job interviews and revealing my stutter and how I tried to hide it, and I didn't do good job interviews. But then when I did hide it, my job interviews went well. So yeah, you've got to decide whether you disclose some of your shortcomings at job interviews. Generally, you would focus on your positives, your strengths, your abilities, and you wouldn't disclose your vulnerabilities in a job interview. In a court of law, if you're a witness or you're a defendant, if you reveal your vulnerability, the prosecution or the defence legal team may dwell on that vulnerability, that uncertainty, and take advantage of you. So I would appear certain and knowledgeable and confident in my evidence in a court of law. So there are two areas that I can think of where you would not reveal your vulnerability. I'm going to pause just for a couple of minutes, because we're getting towards the end, when would you not share your vulnerability? When would you not share your vulnerability? Okay, if I was up for election for president or a senior position in a committee, yeah, I guess you'd focus on what you've done, what you've achieved, how long you've been in that organisation, as opposed to, you know, what you haven't done. Yep, so I guess politicians do that as well. They focus on their strengths and they want to show that they're up for the job. Any other situations where you would not disclose your vulnerability? Okay, great. So one of the open comments when I sought comments from you was it would depend on your audience, and I think you're fairly correct in that in revealing our vulnerability, it does depend on our audience. However, on most occasions, vulnerability is a tool that we can use effectively in our public speaking and our presentations, and we can use it to enhance our connection, our credibility, and therefore enhance our effectiveness as a presenter, speaker, trainer, or facilitator. So use your vulnerability wisely. Don't be afraid of it, and it's about picking the right stories for the right audience, and it can really tremendously catapult you forward in the eyes of your audience. For me, vulnerability is probably one of the keys to my success, the keys to my owning this public speaking space, because of my vulnerability. So just to soft sell some upcoming webinars, April, how to nail your question and answer session, and indeed Q&A can be a vulnerable occasion when people ask you difficult, left field, angry questions. And job interview tips, those of you who want to do a little bit of thinking and speaking off the cuff, I will schedule some more webinars for May. Just go to my website and /webinars, and I do have a range of upcoming workshops that, as you know, are always on my website. I've got workshops in Perth, Kalgoorlie and in Melbourne coming up, so please go to the website and refer to any of your colleagues, networks that you think may value some of my public speaking workshops or webinars. Any final questions? Are there any final questions regarding revealing your vulnerability? As I wait for those final questions, we'll just go back to my closing remarks. Vulnerability is a tool that we can all use effectively in our speaking and our presentations. We can use it to enhance our connection, to enhance our credibility, and therefore it enhances our effectiveness as a communicator. So use your vulnerability. It's a wonderful tool. And I look forward to speaking to you at some stage on the future, or future webinars or future workshops. So thanks everyone. Bye for now. And if anyone wants a copy of the slides or a copy of the webinar recording, just let me know. And I know someone had to pop out of their building because of fire alarm. Send me an email and I can send that to you and you can watch the recording in your own time. Bye for now.